The gloves are off in Cleveland, and what we're watching right now might be one of the most brutal organizational takedowns in recent NFL history. Andrew Berry just stood at a podium and didn't just fire Kevin Stefanski, he systematically dismantled everything the man represented. And y'all, this wasn't your typical "we're going in different directions" press conference. This was a public execution. Listen to me. When a general manager gets up in front of cameras and microphones and tells the entire football world that his head coach failed in areas that could be controlled regardless of game outcomes, that's not corporate speak. That's a shot across the bow. That's Andrew Berry saying Kevin Stefanski wasn't doing his job and he's done pretending otherwise. Now, before anybody starts hitting me with the "you're being dramatic" comments, let me be very clear about what just happened here. Andrew Berry didn't blame injuries. He didn't talk about quarterback situations. He didn't mention bad luck or circumstances outside of anyone's control. He specifically said the decision was made because there was no progress in controllable areas: game management, offensive scheming, clock management, timeout usage, player development. The fundamentals that every real NFL head coach has to master. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. Kevin Stefanski won Coach of the Year twice. The media spent years calling this man an offensive genius. Anytime something went wrong, there was always something else to blame. The quarterback carousel, the injuries, the bad breaks. But Andrew Berry just walked up to that podium and said what people inside that building had apparently been thinking for a long time but were too scared to say out loud. Let's talk about what we know based on what's been reported and discussed publicly. Kevin Stefanski gave up play-calling duties not once but twice during his tenure in Cleveland. Read that again. This is a coach who was hired specifically because of his reputation as an offensive mind, a scheme wizard, a guy who won Coach of the Year primarily because of what his offense was supposed to be able to do. And yet, he stepped away from calling plays 2 separate times. Think about what that means for a second. You hire a chef because he's known for making the best steaks in the city. Then a few months in, that chef tells you someone else is gonna cook the steaks while he manages the kitchen. You wouldn't accept that. You'd question everything. But Stefanski kept his job even after stepping back from his own offensive duties, and somehow it gets worse. While Stefanski was the head coach, he fired 2 offensive coordinators, Alex Van Pelt and Ken Dorsey. That's significant turnover, that's instability. That's resetting the offense over and over again, bringing in new voices, new systems, new approaches. And with all that movement, with all those opportunities to change direction and find something that worked, the offense never elevated, it never became elite, it never even became consistently good. From what we've seen on film and what analysts have broken down, even when the roster was stacked, and I'm talking about prime Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt all on the same team, the offense still underperformed. They had a former number 1 overall pick at quarterback, they had weapons everywhere, and the results just never matched the talent on paper. That's not bad luck, that's a system issue, that's a coaching issue. And this is where the excuses really start to fall apart. You can say, well, the offense had potential or they were close all you want, but film doesn't lie. When people who actually know how to evaluate offensive football break down the tape, the flaws become obvious. And it's not just random people on Twitter saying this. Former NFL quarterbacks, guys like Chase Daniel, Sean King, Drew Bledsoe, Kurt Warner, have all pointed out the same problems. Stefanski's offense wasn't creative. It was predictable, it was outdated, it didn't put players in position to succeed, it didn't adjust to what defenses were showing. It felt like running the same concepts over and over, hopping for different results. But it's not just about the scheme. Based on what we've watched over the years, game management was an issue. Wasting timeouts, poor clock management, mistakes that compound over the course of a season. These aren't small things. These are the details that separate good coaches from bad ones. And according to what's been documented and discussed, Kevin Stefanski struggled in multiple areas. This wasn't just one problem. This was a pattern of failure across several core responsibilities. Now here's where it gets really uncomfortable, and this is what Andrew Berry was alluding to without directly saying it. Let's talk about what the players have said, or more importantly, what they haven't said. When reporters asked Myles Garrett about the situation, what was his response? "I want to win, that's it." No glowing endorsement of the head coach, no strong defense of the system, just a generic answer that didn't commit to anything. And if you've been around the league long enough, you know what that means. When your best player, the face of your franchise, won't publicly back the coach or the system, that tells you everything you need to know. Then there's Odell Beckham Jr., one of the most talented receivers of his generation, wanted out of Cleveland, and it wasn't just about stats or touches or ego. Word around the league was clear, he didn't want to be part of that offense. Players talked to each other, receivers especially talked to receivers. And one thing young players kept hearing when Cleveland came up was simple and terrifying: "I don't even know when I'm gonna get the ball in this offense." That's a red flag the size of a billboard. When talented players are openly expressing confusion about their role in the system, when they can't figure out how to succeed within the structure you've built, that's on the coaching. That's on the scheme. That's on the leadership. What about Baker Mayfield? He had his best statistical season under Stefanski, but the frustration never fully disappeared. He never came out and praised the system. He never talked about how much the offense helped him develop. That silence matters. And then there's Deshaun Watson. From what we saw on the field, he never looked comfortable in that offense. Timing issues, confusion, lack of rhythm, those problems don't just materialize out of thin air. They're symptoms of a system that isn't working. Even Joe Flacco, who came in and did what he was supposed to do, never fully embraced the philosophy. You could see it in his body language, in his post-game comments. He did his job, but there was no passion for what they were running, no belief that this was the right way to move the ball. And now we get to Shedeur Sanders. This young quarterback went through one of the most difficult rookie seasons you'll see. Pressure, chaos, constant issues with protection and rhythm. And here's what's telling: he never once publicly praised the offense. He never talked about how the scheme helped him. He never said the offense put him in position to succeed. He never mentioned that the structure helped him grow. That silence is deafening. Based on everything that's been reported and discussed publicly, not a single quarterback or offensive skill player came out during Stefanski's tenure and said his offense made them better. Not one. The journeyman quarterbacks aren't saying it. The backups aren't saying it. Shedeur Sanders isn't saying it. At some point, you have to look at that pattern and acknowledge what it means. This isn't about attacking Kevin Stefanski as a person. Nobody's saying he's a bad guy. Nobody doubts his work ethic or his preparation or his character. But we're questioning his performance as the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. And when you look at the facts, not the excuses, not the narratives, the case against him becomes really hard to ignore. Andrew Berry made it clear that this wasn't about wins and losses in a vacuum. This was about controllable factors. This was about whether the coach was maximizing the talent on the roster, putting players in position to succeed, managing games effectively, and developing a system that worked in the modern NFL. And based on Berry's statement and everything we've observed, the answer was no. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Andrew Berry is staying, Cleveland is keeping their general manager, and that's raising questions about what comes next. Some people are worried that top coaching candidates won't want to come to Cleveland if Berry is still in charge. The concern is that elite head coaches want full control. They don't want limitations. They don't want someone above them with authority over personnel decisions. But here's the other side of that argument, and it's gaining traction around the league. Andrew Berry just delivered what looks like a really strong draft class. Shedeur Sanders has the profile of a potential franchise quarterback. The trade back from pick 2 to pick 5 was a savvy move that landed them their guy while also adding assets. The addition of Quinshon Judkins strengthened the secondary. By most objective measures, Andrew Berry's most recent draft class didn't just improve the team, it potentially saved his job. Let's be real for a second, that draft might have bought him one more year in Cleveland, and Andrew Berry knows it. Everyone in the league knows it. Trading back from 2 to 5 and getting Quinshon Judkins was a smart decision that worked out. Then making moves to strengthen the secondary, that wasn't luck, that was survival football. But this isn't a long-term extension. This is a warning shot. Those players need to perform, the next draft class needs to hit. And for Andrew Berry to keep his job, Cleveland needs to win somewhere around 7 or 8 games next season. That's the reality. Berry has been put on notice. He knows it. The owner knows it. The league knows it. He's got one more chance to get this right, and he cannot afford to miss again. The next head coaching hire is critical. The next draft is critical. The Browns' 2026 season is critical. If Berry fails again, he won't just be out alongside Kevin Stefanski. He'll be remembered as part of the same collapse. But for now, Andrew Berry has earned the right to take this swing. He's earned the right to build his own vision of the franchise. And he's also earned the right to prove that he's better at evaluating talent than his former head coach was at utilizing it. Throughout this entire process, Berry made one thing abundantly clear. Kevin Stefanski wasn't the solution, he was the problem. And despite what some people might think about Cleveland as a franchise, Andrew Berry is respected around the NFL. People like him. People respect his football IQ. People believe he's a capable general manager who knows how to build a competitive roster. If that reputation holds, real coaching candidates should want to work in Cleveland. Yes, this is Cleveland. Yes, the franchise has decades of dysfunction. Yes, there are legitimate concerns. But there are also young players, draft capital, cap space, and an organization willing to spend to win. For the right coach, this is a legitimate opportunity. This isn't a rebuild from scratch. This is a team with pieces in place that needs the right leader to put it all together. So now we get to the real question. Who's the coach that can fix what Kevin Stefanski broke? Who's the coach that can unlock Shedeur Sanders' potential as a quarterback? Who can install an offense that actually works in today's NFL? Who can manage a game without burning timeouts like they're going out of style? who can communicate with players in a way that earns respect instead of confusion. Andrew Barry has to answer those questions correctly. And if he doesn't, if he hires another coach who can't lead, adapt, or connect with players, all the goodwill he built with that draft class will evaporate instantly. Barry knows the clock is ticking, but for now, he knows one thing for certain: he believes he made the right decision. He just fired a two-time Coach of the Year and didn't hesitate, apologize, or soften the message. He looked at the evidence, made the hardest call of his career, and moved forward. That takes conviction. That takes belief. That takes confidence in your own evaluation even when others doubt you. Kevin Stefanski will likely land somewhere else. His resume looks good on paper. Teams are always looking for coaches. But in Cleveland, this chapter didn't end with sympathy. It didn't end with mutual respect. It ended with the general manager publicly dismantling his tenure and making it clear he wasn't good enough. That's brutal. That's harsh. But in the NFL, sometimes the only way forward is through brutal honesty. The Browns are at a crossroads. They have a young quarterback who showed flashes even in a broken system. They have Myles Garrett anchoring a strong defense. They have cap space and draft picks. They finally have a legitimate opportunity to reset. If they build this thing correctly, they could become the contender their fans have been waiting for. But it all comes down to the coach. If Cleveland gets this hire right, they might be competing for playoffs next season. If they get it wrong, it's back to square one. Another rebuild, another reset, another decade of frustration. This is the boldest move Andrew Barry has ever made. He fired Kevin Stefanski. He explained why without sugarcoating it, and he took full ownership of what comes next. Now he has to deliver. The entire league is watching. Cleveland fans are watching. And most importantly, players like Shedeur Sanders are watching closely. They want to know if this organization is serious about winning, or if this is just another chapter in the same old story with a different face. One thing is certain: the Kevin Stefanski era in Cleveland is officially over. It didn't end quietly, it didn't fade away. It ended with a blunt statement about lack of progress in controllable areas. That's one of the harshest evaluations a head coach can receive. Stefanski had his opportunity. He had the time, he had the talent, he had the resources, and he didn't deliver. Now someone else gets their chance. The question is, will the next coach accomplish what Stefanski couldn't, or will Cleveland's coaching carousel keep spinning? And what does this mean for Shedeur Sanders moving forward? Does this give him a real opportunity to develop under a system that actually puts him in position to succeed? Or is this just more organizational chaos for a young quarterback trying to find his footing in the NFL? Based on what we've seen from Shedeur, the kid has toughness. He has composure. He showed patience even when everything around him was falling apart. But patience only goes so far. At some point you need structure, you need coaching, you need a system that makes sense. And from everything we've observed, Kevin Stefanski's offense wasn't providing that. Think about what Shedeur went through as a rookie: constant pressure, protection issues, confusion in the system, limited weapons at times, and through all of that he never threw his coaches under the bus. He never publicly complained. He took his reps, did his work, and kept his head down. That's professionalism, that's maturity beyond his years. But here's what's uncomfortable. Andrew Barry just made it clear that the system Shedeur was learning in wasn't good enough. The coaching he was receiving wasn't developing him properly. The offense he was running wasn't setting him up for success. So what does that mean for his development? How much time did he lose running plays in a scheme that the organization itself now admits wasn't working? This isn't about making excuses for Shedeur. This is about context. Two things can be true at once. Shedeur can have areas he needs to improve, and the system around him can have been flawed. That's not contradictory. That's reality. Young quarterbacks need good coaching. They need good schemes. They need to be put in position to learn and grow. And if the organization is now saying that wasn't happening under Stefanski, then we have to acknowledge what that means for Shedeur's rookie season. From what analysts who actually break down film have said, there were plays where Shedeur made the right read but the protection broke down. There were plays where he hit his guy in stride but the route concepts didn't create separation. There were plays where he managed the pocket well but had nowhere to go with the football because the play design didn't work against the coverage. Those aren't quarterback problems. Those are system problems. But here's where it gets tricky. The national media doesn't always see it that way. They look at stats. They look at wins and losses. They don't necessarily dive into the film and see what's really happening on every snap. So when people evaluate Shedeur's rookie year, are they going to account for the context? Are they going to acknowledge that he was operating in a system his own organization now says wasn't good enough? Or are they just going to look at the numbers and make assumptions? That's what makes this situation so important for Shedeur moving forward. The next coach is critical. The next offensive coordinator is critical. The next system he learns is critical, because if Cleveland gets this right, Shedeur could take a massive step forward. But if they get it wrong, if they bring in another coach who can't scheme, can't adjust, can't develop quarterbacks, then we're right back where we started. And let's talk about the pressure that comes with all of this. Shedeur isn't just any rookie quarterback. He's Deion Sanders' son. He's got a massive social media following. He's got national attention that most rookies don't deal with. Every move he makes is analyzed. Every throw is scrutinized. Every interview is dissected. That's a lot to handle for a young player trying to find his way in the NFL. Some people think that kind of attention is a distraction. Some people think it creates unnecessary pressure. But here's the thing, if you can't handle the attention that comes with being Shedeur Sanders, then you're not ready for what the NFL demands anyway. There's always going to be a quarterback with a huge Instagram following. There's always going to be a receiver who wants to be on Dancing with the Stars. There's always going to be a running back dating a Kardashian. This is the NFL. This is the reality. If you can't deal with it now, you won't be able to deal with it later. It's always going to be something. It's always going to be someone. The question is whether you can block out the noise and focus on football. And from what we've seen, Shedeur has shown he can do that. He doesn't get rattled by the attention. He doesn't let the social media criticism get to him. He stays locked in on the work. But the system around him has to support that. The coaching has to support that. The organization has to create an environment where he can develop without unnecessary chaos. And that's what Andrew Berry is betting on with this move. He's betting that by removing Kevin Stefanski and bringing in someone new, he can create the stability and structure that Shedeur needs to reach his potential. Now let's talk about what happens next. Cleveland is going to interview coaching candidates. They're going to look for someone who can come in and fix what was broken. They're going to look for someone who can develop Shedeur, unlock the offense, and manage games at a high level. The question is, who's out there that fits that description? There are offensive minds available. There are coordinators who have had success. There are former head coaches looking for another opportunity. But Cleveland has to be smart about this. They can't just hire someone because they have a big name or an impressive resume. They need to find someone whose system actually matches the personnel they have. They need to find someone who can adapt and adjust. They need to find someone who players will actually believe in. Because that's what was missing with Stefanski, at least according to what Andrew Berry implied. Players didn't fully buy in. They didn't believe the system was putting them in position to win. And when you don't have that belief from your locker room, it doesn't matter how smart you are or how many Coach of the Year awards you've won. You're not going to succeed. Think about the great coaches in NFL history. The one thing they all have in common is that their players believed in them. Their players trusted the system. Their players went to war for them every Sunday. That trust, that belief, that connection, it's everything. And from what we've observed and what's been reported, Kevin Stefanski never fully established that in Cleveland. So the next coach has to be someone who can walk into that locker room and earn that respect immediately. Someone who can look Myles Garrett in the eye and convince him this is the right direction. Someone who can sit down with Shedeur Sanders and show him how the offense is going to help him succeed. Someone who can bring energy, belief, and accountability to the entire building. That's a tall order. That's a difficult hire to make. But it's also the most important decision Andrew Berry will make in his career. Because if he gets this wrong, he's done. If he hires another coach who can't connect with players, can't scheme effectively, can't manage games, it's over. He'll be out the door right behind them. But if he gets it right, if he finds the coach who can unlock this roster and turn Cleveland into a legitimate contender, then all of this, the brutal press conference, the public dismantling of Stefanski, the risk of keeping his own job on the line, it'll all be worth it. And that's where we are right now, standing at a crossroads, watching Andrew Berry bet his career on his ability to find the right leader, watching Shedeur Sanders wait to see who's going to coach him next. Watching Cleveland fans hold their breath, hoping this time it's different. The whole league is talking about this. Analysts are debating whether Berry made the right move. Former players are weighing in on what Stefanski did wrong. Fans are arguing about what Cleveland should do next. It's everywhere. And that's because this isn't just about one team making a coaching change. This is about accountability. This is about whether organizations are willing to make hard decisions even when it's uncomfortable. Andrew Berry just showed that he is. He didn't hide behind corporate language. He didn't make excuses. He didn't pretend this was mutual or amicable. He stood up and said Kevin Stefanski failed in areas that could be controlled. That's as direct as it gets. That's as honest as you'll see from an NFL general manager. And now we wait. We wait to see who Cleveland hires. We wait to see if that coach can develop Shedeur. We wait to see if Andrew Berry's evaluation was correct. We wait to see if this was the turning point Cleveland needed or just another chapter in the same dysfunction. What we do know is this: Kevin Stefanski's time in Cleveland is over. It ended with one of the most direct, unfiltered takedowns we've seen from a general manager. It ended with questions about his ability to scheme, manage games, and develop players. It ended with his own organization saying he wasn't good enough. That's harsh, that's brutal, but it's also football. And sometimes the only way to move forward is to be completely honest about why something didn't work. Andrew Berry did that. Now he has to prove he can find someone better. The clock is ticking, the pressure is mounting, and everyone is watching to see what happens next.